I came in the first day to orientation and it was like, hi, welcome to Red Hat. And then the second day I came in and it was like, hi, welcome to IBM. And we're like, all like, what?
Can you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. No, thank you for having me. So my name is Amanda Bravo. I'm originally from a beautiful country in South America called Venezuela. I was born and raised there. And I moved to the United States 11 years ago to get my undergraduate degree in business administration and marketing from NC State University here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So while I was there, during my studies, I actually started to work part-time with a nonprofit organization on campus. And that just kind of led to a 5 to 7 year career in nonprofits. I basically did a lot of stuff from, marketing to like administration. I did a little bit of like graphic design, communications. And then the last 3 years, I spent working for a public health organization doing project management. And then just like throughout my career in nonprofits, like one of the things that I learned was like the importance that business and the private sectors have to drive good in the community. So I'm a true believer that businesses can and should be drivers of a good for the communities that they work in. So that just kind of led me back to school to get my MBA because I wanted to focus on my career in sustainability and how like businesses can help like create that change and just like sustainable practices overall. And that led me to UNC since I have one of the best sustainability programs in the country. During my time at UNC, one of my concentrations was in sustainability, obviously, and then the other one was in operations. Funny enough, one of the things that I learned while I was working for nonprofits was my passion for numbers and for finance in general. So as I mentioned, I spent 3 years working as a project manager for an international nonprofit, and part of the things that I really enjoyed about my work were like the finance aspects of it. So like managing the budgets, doing the expense tracking, doing the financial reports for donors and so on. So basically when it comes to like sustainability, you kind of have two routes. So you can either go work in a sustainability role within a company, so like working in CSR for like Coca-Cola, for example.
Sure.
Or you can go into like a functional role within a sustainability focused organization. And I basically chose that route because I really like finance. And so I did my internship in finance with Whirlpool during my MBA. And then after graduation, I joined Red Hat as a senior financial analyst.
For me, I think like sustainability and finance is a very different two topics. Like how does that like come together?
No, that's a great question. So actually, for me, so I was working in a nonprofit that was working in public health in sexual and reproductive rights for women. So the mission of the organization was kind of like what was like the driver for my work and for me to come to work every day. I was like, oh, I'm really passionate about this. This is like really interesting. I want to help change the world. I want to this is my impact to the world. But of course, for you to go and, plant 100 trees, you always need, people in the back end doing, like the logistics and the finance and everything. Yeah. So for me, it's like combining my two passions. So yes, I love working with numbers. I love like diving into like a spreadsheet and finding the answer to the questions through the numbers. But I also knowing that me doing this is helping like a bigger good in the world, like helping make a change in some other ways. So like I mentioned, you kind of have two routes. You can go into like the more like sustainability focus, where you can be doing a lot of like different things, but I kind of I chose to be doing finance so that I'm like at the back end supporting the people that are in the front end kind of thing.
I think I now understand why you did your MBA. Like I have zero knowledge in nonprofit. And like, to be honest, I was more like, why would someone in nonprofit come to MBA? Like that was my first question when I first met you and Damon. But I was like, so yeah, like were you kind of seeing yourself in your position now when you were in like, 3 years ago applying for MBAs?
That's a great question. Actually, yes and no. So basically nonprofits, they're not that different from businesses. Like they'll have your traditional roles, like accounting and like marketing and HR and so on. So there is some part of like a business to it. I'm a true believer that actually nonprofit should be run as a business. So basically that, the only difference of course is that nonprofits don't make a profit. So instead of like, if you apply the mindset of a business where you're trying to like, save costs so that you have more profit, the nonprofits can take that extra profit, and instead of like redistributing it to the stakeholders, they can like reinvest it in the programs so that you can like make sure that you have like sustainability of the programs in the long term. So there is a change. There was like a big change of mindset from my end because I was never really too focused on the profit and like the top line. I was like mostly focused on like expenses and making sure that we weren't going over budget, because basically we only had that money. We didn't have like extra money to tap in. So it is a little bit of like a change in mindset, and that's something that like actually my internship really helped me to kind of like navigate. Of course, the way that nonprofit works is a little bit different than how like big corporation works, and that was like a big change for me, especially in my internship with Whirlpool, where you have like over 500 people in an office, versus coming from 100 people in an office type of nonprofit. So and I'm sure that happens also coming from like a small business to like a big corporation. So there are small differences, but there's also like a lot of similarities. The MBA did really help me to change like that mindset. It basically helped me change to like the type of questions that you ask in a nonprofit to the type of questions that you would ask in a business.
Gotcha. Shifting gears a little bit. So you said you work as a senior financial analyst at Red Hat. Can you tell me a little bit about how you, like the process of getting into Red Hat? I would assume that a lot of the audience would be really interested in that as well.
Sure. I do want to make a caveat that I understand that my process is very different to a lot of other people's. I was actually very lucky because my process was like really short and quick. But I know that other people have had other experiences, so I'm just going to talk about my experience. So like I mentioned, like I've been in Raleigh, North Carolina for the past 11 years, and Red Hat is one of the big employers here, and I've like always wanted to work there because I really admire the company and the work that they do with like open source and how they apply that to help the community. So it was just like I was always interested in them. You actually did your internship in Red Hat, and you knew that I was like, you knew I was really interested in working with them. And you were kind enough to put me in contact with someone that worked in the finance team in Red Hat, and I did a call very similar to this one, just like an interest call to learn more about the company and the role and what it looked like. During that call, we discussed a specific role that I was like applying to, and we discussed like how my skills and ability applied to that role. And then that colleague actually offered to get me a referral to the position. Basically, what a referral means in Red Hat is that an HR person will contact you to do a screening of basically just like a screening interview. And then depending on how that goes, you either move on or you don't. So lucky for me, I did move on. And then I had my first interview with HR, and then they put me in contact with the hiring manager, and I had a video interview with them. So I think I talked to the HR person, if I remember correctly, on a Friday, and then maybe like the next week they were like, "Oh, do you have time for a call with the hiring manager?" And I think I talked to them either at the end of that week or the beginning of the next week. And then they brought me in for what they call a panel interview, which is actually not a panel interview. It's just like back-to-back interviews with different people. So during that interview, I met again with the hiring manager. I also met with like the director of the team. I met with a kind of like a counterpart colleague that like interviewed me, and they just like, they had all different variants of like questions in terms of like difficulties. Like some of them were like very technical, some were more like story based, some were just like also like very cultural, because for Red Hat it's very important that you're like a culture fit.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I think it was probably like a week and a half after I got the offer. It's a very short and quick process, yes. But I know that might not be the
So you work as a senior financial analyst. Tell me what you do there.
Cool. So basically, I joined a new team within Red Hat, which is called the Verticals team. And it actually varies. And that's kind of like one of the things that I really like, that my role has been kind of like evolving in this year and a half that I've joined Red Hat. So basically, as the senior financial analyst, I am in charge of doing like top line reporting for the by verticals. So what that means is that we consolidate each of the geos numbers and provide report to our stakeholders based on the specific vertical. So for example, like telecommunications or financial services. And that said, like various difference of reporting. So this is a very FP&A type of role.
Gotcha. So can you tell me a little bit about your like how does your day-to-day look like?
So basically we have a team in Pune, India, that we work really closely together with. They really help us to do a lot of like, like the groundwork with the data, like they keep the data and all of that. So I work really closely with them. So usually, it depends on where in the year we are. But usually I would have meetings with them in the early morning, just trying to like prepare for the week and for the day and be like, okay, these are the ad hoc requests that we got from our stakeholders. This is what the report that they want us to look at. Let's like, brainstorm of what type of data we need in order to answer these questions. I also, because we do consolidate the information from the geos, I also have to interact a lot with like geo counterparts to make sure that our logic aligns and that our numbers are aligning. And we do a lot of like sharing of information and like reports, like we might have a report that might help them and so on. So I work with them. I also work very closely with our data scientists person in the team because since we are a new team, we've been building a lot of like new reports for like the future. So we've been building a lot of like dashboards in Tableau so that stakeholders can easily access the information whenever they need it. So that requires a lot of like back and forth between validating the numbers, but also in the design part of the reports. Also, like right now, I'm in the middle of planning, so that might take like a chunk of my time to like consolidate like the planning numbers and like run some of the planning models. Sometimes I support in the forecast process. Also, I'm also like responsible for coordinating like end of quarter activities and like preparing QBRs and so on.
That's a lot of work.
Yes. It doesn't happen all in one day. I'm just like talking about different times of the quarter.
I was gonna ask if you had any kind of learning curve when you came into this role as a senior financial analyst, because like just it can be different from what you've been doing before. So
yes, no, I definitely had a big learning curve. The thing is, like, since it was kind of like a new team and we were like a small team, they just kind of like pushed you into the waters, so you didn't have like a lot of time to like figure out how things work. You just kind of had to go with it.
Yeah, very tech company like.
Yes, and I think Red Hat in particular is very much like that. I was very lucky that a colleague, a friend of mine, who actually a friend of ours, actually joined Red Hat a few weeks or a month before I did. So when I came in, she just kind of like helped me make sure that I was like set up the right way to kind of like diminish that like learning curve. But yeah, it always takes time to get adjusted to how things work in any company and like learn how where to get the information and who to go to get the information. Particularly what took some time in my particular role is like learning what logic we were using for each of the verticals and understanding how all piece together, and also understanding Red Hat and how it works and the products, and, making sure that I understood all the little acronyms and what everything meant. So,
I remember like Red Hat's business model is just so much different than where I was in. Like, for example, in smartphones, you just sell one product and then that's just it. But it's just so much different in Red Hat. Like I basically had to relearn myself about like what does revenue look like, what does profit look like, and all that.
Yeah.
So like that must have been same process for you as well.
Yeah. But again, coming from the nonprofit, I was like never too worried about like the big top line numbers because that wasn't what we did. So it was like just like learning from the first time, not necessarily relearning it. So I guess I had that in my advantage.
Yeah. Awesome. So you mentioned about Red Hat culture, and like when people talk about Red Hat, like culture is a big piece. So can you tell me a little bit about like what you think Red Hat's culture is, and like how you know, if you like it, or like how is it?
It's really funny because I guess if you compare it to other businesses, it might be very different, but coming from a nonprofit, it wasn't that different. It wasn't that much of a culture shock for me. So basically, I really like the Red Hat culture. I think it's a really good fit for me because it's a very collaborative culture. And I believe that I thrive best when I'm working in teams. I mean, I work really closely with you throughout the MBA, so I think you already know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the openness of it all. Like you can really just like, and how everyone is like really always like available to help no matter what. Like everyone's really always happy to sit with you and help you like track down a problem or help you find the solution. And if they don't know it, they'll like definitely reference you to the right person. So I've never had an issue working with anyone. Everyone's always been like really nice, willing to help. And I think just like that collaboration aspect of it and that like transparency and openness is what really makes Red Hat unique, I guess, compared to like other companies.
Yeah. Is that a Red Hat? Like
it is. That is my Red Hat.
I was like, is that a clock? No, it doesn't look like a clock. But
no, that's actually my Red Hat, the one that I got at orientation.
Yep. I know you joined the company after the IBM like thing happened, but like, is there any like I was there when IBM thing was happening, but like, is there anything noticeable that has been changing, or were there a lot of IBM stuff coming in? Because I know that was something like that was a big topic for like when it first was announced in like 2018 or something. So just want to ask, like, is there any influence or is there any changes that were made after the whole thing?
Yeah, no, I even remember when I heard the announcement in the radio and I was like, oh, wow, what does this mean for Red Hat? So I definitely understand where this question is coming from, because this is a question that I actually brought up during my interview process. So IBM acquired Red Hat in my second day in Red Hat. So actually I came in the first day to orientation and it was like, hi, welcome to Red Hat. And then the second day I came in and it was like, hi, welcome to IBM. And we're like, all like, what? And they're like, yeah, it just got official. We're actually all walking down the street to the convention center for the announcement, which was a really cool experience to be there when the official announcement was made. So I work in finance, and actually I can't really talk about the impact before IBM because basically I got acquired on my second day. But some of the biggest changes that we've experienced, at least in finance, is just like trying to adapt our fiscal year to their fiscal year. So before Red Hat fiscal year ended on February 28th or 29th, and now we're on calendar year, similar to IBM. So that has been one of like our biggest adjustment that we've had to make. And of course, now we're getting a lot more requests, like IBM wants to understand why this is happening, and so on. So I think finance might be the department that has gotten the most impact from IBM. I think if you talk to someone from engineering or from marketing, they might have not felt that much of an impact yet. At least this like first year of the acquisition, they've been fairly hands-on.
Have you heard anything about like on the culture aspect? Because that was a big issue when like it was all announced in the beginning.
Yeah, no, it's a big concern for sure for a lot of people. The message that we have received throughout this year has been that they recognize Red Hat culture and that they recognize it as an asset. So they definitely don't want to go mess with it. They really want to keep the culture, and even I think they're hoping that it will somehow Red Hat culture influence IBM's culture.
Huh.
And we actually, I mean, I personally do believe that they are being sincere when they talk about this. I mean, our previous CEO, Jim, is now the president of IBM. So I think we have someone in the big table rooting for us and working to make sure that the culture stays the same. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you like most and what do you like least about your role?
What I like the most is definitely the people. I really like my team. I really enjoy working with them. And I really like how, I already mentioned this, but I really like how the work has been evolving, that I'm not always doing the same thing. So that has been like really interesting, because I like to be challenged and I've been kept challenged. I think what I like the least is that sometimes we have to work on holidays because of the nature of our work. And the early mornings, like sometimes I have to like have meetings at like 5 a.m. to talk with people in Asia Pac. So I think that will be the least.
Gotcha. Yeah. What surprised you the most about the company?
What really surprises me is the culture, because, usually culture is kind of like a buzzword that a lot of companies use. And they're like, yeah, we have this like great culture, we have great diversity, but you don't usually see them like walking the talk. At Red Hat, you see how important it is. You really see how being a cultural fit sometimes has a lot more value than not having like the technical background for it. They're like, you know what, if you're a good fit culturally, we can work around, you not having the specific background. We can make sure that you get the training necessary to meet that technical level. And then you see the effort that they put in like maintaining and keeping that culture throughout everything that they do, basically. So they really do invest a lot in the culture, and it's just like not something that they say they do, but it's something that they actually do, which I think is really nice.
Gotcha. Yeah. Culture was a big thing when I was there as well. So I would assume that's the same now as well.
Yeah.
So my last question would be advice for those who want to join Red Hat and or who want to break into corporate finance or a financial role.
Yeah, no, great question. I think my first advice will be to tap into your network. I know it sometimes can be awkward, or you don't want to feel like you're burdening someone, but I can assure you that it's going to be worth it, and that they're going to be more than happy to help you. You have no idea how much it can like help you to ask someone if they know someone, or if they can put you in contact with someone. I know it has helped open a lot of doors for me. And then my second advice for those that want to like tap into like corporate finance and are coming from like a different background is to like really look at your skills and your experience and see how you can transfer them into finance. Like, I was coming from nonprofit, so at first I was like, oh, I felt like I wasn't prepared, or that I didn't meet the qualifications for a finance role. But after taking like a closer look, I realized like a lot of the skills that I was like using, even though they could be transferred for something else. So have an open mind when it comes to your skills and your experience, and try to find a way to see how you can apply it to other roles and industries.
I love what you mentioned about the transferable skills, because like that's something that we all have, but we often neglect it when we do, kind of talk to our interviewers or when we actually check out roles. So I think that's a really, really good point. Thank you, Amanda, for today. This really helped. I really appreciate your time, and would assume that a lot of our audience got valuable lesson from the interview today. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me, and I hope they enjoy the talk.